It's really good to see you. Today, we've got a really exciting one where we're going to discuss two of our productions. But yeah, this is English Touring Opera in conversation with, I'm Bradley Travis, English Touring Opera's Associate Artist. Our artistic director, I think James Conway, is here, but I can't see him yet. So
he's in his black room. He's in a black room, definitely.
He's in his black room. Exactly. Oh, James says he can't hear us. Anyway, so tonight we're going to discuss two of our, what we're going to call seminal productions. We're going to discuss the Olivier Award-winning King Priam, and also the double bill of Gianni Schicchi and Il Tabarro, which we've done twice now. We revived it most recently in 2018. And I'm joined, I'm delighted to say, by tenor Charne Rochford. Hi, Charne.
Hi, Bradley. Hi, nice to see you. Hi, good evening, whoever's watching, all three of you. Apparently, James, I've just got a message from James, says he is there, but cannot see me, and I cannot hear you, apparently. So maybe we might, a technical glitch, everyone at home. We might need to sort that out. I don't know from his end, I don't know.
Yeah. James, perhaps you try leaving and then coming back, and we'll get you back in to the conversation. And Clarissa Meek as well was just with us, but she has gone to move to a different part of the house to get better signal. So we'll just crack on. What I'm going to do first of all is I'm just going to show you some images. So it's really great in a way that it's stifling hot, because we're going to transport you tonight to Troy, which I guess was pretty warm for King Priam, and also to the canals of Paris in Il Tabarro, and then also to the beautiful Florence or Firenze for Gianni Schicchi. So these are three productions. James is just going to join, but I'll show you now these lovely images from these operas that we're going to be discussing. So here we are. This is one of the first images that we've got. This is in King Priam. Charne, do you want to sort of talk us through as we go your memories of Priam? Oh, you're muted. Oh, James, you're here. Do you want to talk us through Priam?
Yes, I'm happy to. I was there before, but nobody could see me or hear me.
How strange. Well, here we are. I'm just showing some production images of Priam as we crack on.
My goodness. That's the most remarkable scene. I remember a rather well-known tenor who was on our board and was a great guy, was a fantastic board member. He said, oh no, you're not doing King Priam. It's got that interminable scene with women. It's of course the most extraordinary scene in opera, really, with these three brilliant, utterly different, utterly eloquent women looking at the fate of men and of women in connection with men from very different perspectives. So this is the three goddesses in the first case forcing the choice upon Paris between I suppose fame, the pleasures of the hearth or family life, and what is essentially sensuality. And he has to make his choice, and of course he chooses sensuality. And then the same three women get a much longer scene in the third act, and I remember when this board member said it to me, I said, but that's the best scene in the opera. It's absolutely extraordinary. And there are not scenes like that in operas written by men. This is something to celebrate. This is something to I want to do it twice every night, actually, except that it's so blooming hard. And I can see that Laura Malloy is here with us, and she'll be able to testify to just how hard that scene is. But there, in any case, you see Laura as Hecuba stroke Athena, and you see Neve Kelly as Helen stroke Aphrodite. And you see, oh my God, my dear friend, how do these things happen? Someone speak up quickly. Our Hera, who cried so eloquently in the last act, and she did so many roles for us so very
Camilla
well.
Roberts.
Yes, Camilla, dearest Camilla, as the wife of Hector, and also the person who champions the values of family life rather unsuccessfully, I feel. But she starts that famous scene for women, which I always think should be done. You know, when they do scenes in colleges, that scene should be done. There are always good women in colleges. They're usually a few years ahead of the men in terms of ability. And sometimes in terms of musicality. I hate to generalize, but that scene should be done in colleges, and they should have to learn it. Oh, and look at that. There's father and son, Grant Doyle looking about 18, and my girl looking far older than he is, as Priam himself, and his son, his pride and joy, Hector. And there's Charne with his friend, the pal of his heart, one might say, dear Piotr Lempa, who's now living in Berlin, I think, and working mostly there, a true bass. And there are Priam and his two sons that feature. Nicholas Sharrett, I have to say, Nicholas, with all the tenors in the piece, and all the sopranos in the piece, and everyone else in the piece, but I remember when I looked at Paris, I just thought, oh God, that's a hard part. And he doesn't get grateful music. It's just plain hard. And Nick just lapped it up and was note perfect from the first rehearsal. And he's, of course, a beautiful actor, quite an extraordinary fellow. So what a company there of Nicholas Sharrett and Grant Doyle and Roderick Earle, we know as my girl. And there's Camilla at the beginning of that scene with women, all the women of the chorus and her, a lovely Sue. And there's the ecstatic song of Helen of Troy. I remember Neve, she didn't have confidence at the beginning. She really wondered, was I offering this to her? Because it was the biggest thing I'd ever offered her. But she has a remarkable bottom, and it's a very sensuous voice, rich, and she has the top. She just needed the confidence to know that she had the top, because the ecstatic poem of Helen about sex is unequaled in opera, and there's a lot of opera about sex. And there are the women who are saying, oh yes, great to have stories of queens and princesses. What about us? What happens to women in time of war? This is very, very timely, of course, since we're looking at the Tippett song cycle, the Heart's Assurance at the moment, which concentrates by and large on the fate of women and of carnal love in times of war. And these women are all saying, we will be raped first and enslaved second. This is the fate of women in war, always. Consider that, audience. Holy cow, does Michael Tippett ever serve it up to the audience who are used to having war glorified in operatic terms and victories celebrated? They called a spade, and what a bunch of women we had. Look at them, every one of them, a strong, very particular performer and a complete joy to work with. I know I'm talking like somebody at a race course about all their favorite things, but I look at it and I just get excited. I know all those women, and they are fantastic. And Tippett gave women a great voice in that opera, and he doesn't get any bloody credit for it. It should be in the repertory of every major English company, every English language company, and it should be regularly performed in Europe. And Laura and Charne, who were and Clarissa, who are the interpreters who do it best, should be working there. That's my feeling about it.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, but really, it was so special. Holy cow. I mean, really hard. He makes it almost unnecessarily hard. That's a characteristic of Tippett. And players will always say to you, oh gosh, does he have to make it so? The notation is very difficult. But it does need to be that difficult because it's very special. That's my feeling as someone who couldn't sing a note of it or play a note of it. But what I saw in your struggles to be perfect, which you were, because my whole career has just consisted of luck. And I look at Clarissa and Charne and Laura, and I just think, what luck? I mean, holy cow. Nobody can sing Achilles like that. It could have been written for you. It was written for you. And the noise you made was astonishing and dramatic. I've always said that you were the best first armed man in the whole wide world. And that is high praise, because first armed man and first lady are the biggest parts on stage in Magic Flute, as we know. They have to have the biggest voices. And then when you came to do this, only a year after you sang Adorno, I think, in
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Which is my favorite Verdi opera. I just think, well, what luck.
Oh,
Radiant, strong, virile, in a way that most people singing Adorno and Achilles aren't. I mean, mostly they sound like they're a cock at 4 a.m, or someone who's busy being strangled. But you sound like an expression of rampant, dangerous, and yet strangely affecting male sexuality. So there, I've done all kinds of.
We should have to go out now after this. I think well, no, but I just mean to bathe in your glow, because I have to say that I don't mean to be sort of trying to be sort of faint, but to be able to do repertoire like this, it's literally unheard of. Like, I'd never heard of King Priam before this. I'd never had. Obviously, I know the story, and also, like you say, do the Simon Boccanegra. Like, I knew it, but I knew some arias from it. But to be able to do it, and I was thinking, because I was wondering what we were going to talk about today, and just as a company, I'm not paid to say this, but like ETO is like it's the closest you can get to a fest system in England, because you get to try out all these roles in a really safe, loving, nurturing environment. You obviously have James, who's on your side as well artistically, and allows you to make all these wonderful choices, and even if they're wrong choices, just to be able to make them and be bold and sing, and obviously sing amazing music on top. It has always been a joy. I've done quite a few things for James and for the company, I should say. And the touring element is as well. It brings it. Obviously, it makes you stronger as an artist, and also you're bringing it. It helps everybody, because it brings everybody opera that they would literally never see or never be bothered to see, in their local theatre. And obviously
it's not good. I mean, I only pick them because they're good, and because I think we can do them well, and because I think they're going to show off people. Like, I mean, actually, I should say to you all, everyone, Priam, first day, to ask people to do a sing through. I mean, it was a challenge for the blooming conductor, let alone any of the singers, and he had the score in front of him. And we were lucky with the pianist, because he loved to challenge. But it was tough to say to everybody, we're going to sing this through. But you three were no perfect. And I remember, Clarissa, you had scenes with people who were not no perfect.
I don't think I was no perfect at all.
Well, I thought you just kept getting put off. But you've done a pretty good job. But that's a plus in England. You get musicians to sing for you.
Yeah.
That's a plus. One isn't always that lucky. I haven't had any big international career. I don't care about that. I've worked in fantastic places. And both in Ireland and in England, I meet people who come knowing their music. And that means you've got a chance of making art. You don't stand a chance otherwise. All you can do is hope to get through it without your ass showing to the audience. Unintentionally, that is. But really, I was impressed that on the first day of King Priam, I thought, okay, there's some places where we're going to have a struggle, and we're going to have to pull forward. But I don't think there are that many countries where you would, not just the front cast, I have to say, but also the covers. And these are really impossible roles to cover.
Yeah.
The people came knowing their music pretty much. Those who didn't knew it. and boy, did they feel it.
Yeah, exactly. And could I just add, there was an incident, because I was thinking about stories, because obviously I hadn't thought about it for a while in terms of the nitty gritty, because I remember Adrian Dwyer, who played Hermes, was ill for one of the shows. I think it was in the Linbury. And anyway, when we're in our dressing room, we basically go on stage barefoot. So the dressing room are kind enough to give us these flip-flops to walk from dressing room to stage. And so Ashley Catling, my dear friend Ashley, who also is in the double bill first time round, he went on to do it, and I did not envy him at all, because it was so difficult, Hermes' stuff. And he had to swap. We had a scene change. He came on stage because we know each other really well. He thought I was having banter, but he came on stage. He was about to do his scene, but he was still wearing his flip flops. And they were like, they had like the Star Spangled Banner on them or something like that. And I just thought, as you saw in the costumes at the beginning, I said, Ashley, your shoes, take your shoes off. Like that. I was being really, really quiet. Take your shoes off. And I was trying to look brooding, because I think the audience could vaguely see me. Take your shoes off now. And then he comes back to me and he says, "Shut up," because he thinks I'm taking the mickey. He thinks I'm being silly. I said, "Take your shoes off." And then he looks down and goes, "Oh yeah." And he throws his shoes off stage. Anyway, but he sang it amazingly. Apart from the flip-flop incident, he was perfect. But sorry, on the tail end of what you're saying, James.
But I mean, the thing, I remember Ashley's first rehearsal, in that he really didn't want to. He was singing a great part in Paul Bunyan. But actually, Hermes was, I think it was easier for him than it was for Adrian, because Adrian's voice was getting bigger at that point. And all that melismatic stuff he found quite challenging. And he said to me, "Why did you think I could do this?" And I said, "Well, because you used to do this." And then, I mean, he was perfectly in tune. I mean, he's extraordinary, Adrian, for tuning each show. But Ashley had something different, which was, an extreme fluency in that sort of head voice style of doing the role. It's a funny old opera, because almost every role has a completely different way of singing, even though people blend. When you think about the tenors, Hermes, Paris, Achilles, and don't forget the young guard, whose part is not unchallenging. In fact, it's ridiculously challenging. They're just completely different kinds of singers, aren't they? And the women, if you think about the sopranos in the piece, very unlike. I think Tippett really knew what he was doing, and boy, what a labor of love in the libretto. I don't know, did you guys feel that it was worth singing those words in the same way as I felt, wow, this is, if I do nothing else, this is worth directing, because these words mean something about war, about peace, about how we should live our lives, about morality. And yet, and they're beautiful poetry. All these moronic critics who write that, Tippett shouldn't write libretti and it's all too much in his head and it's all this and that and the other. Oh, jeepers, they repeat the same things over and over again. Of course, I don't know any moronic critics, but I'm sure there are some out there. I mean, cripes. How did Clarissa? You had wonderful words with Andrew Slater and Andrew. What am I saying? Adam Tunnicliffe, not Andrew.
Yeah. No, they were fantastic. I mean, the whole experience of Priam was sort of at another level. Really, it was just extraordinary. And the words, the poetry. It's such a poem, isn't it? It is so beautiful, and utterly moving. Every night, well, in fact, every rehearsal. I mean, you were kind of torn apart as well, actually. Not that, you were lifted to this extraordinary place, but you were torn apart by it as well. as well as sort of, you know, trying to get it right. But it is the most profound. It's incredibly profound piece. And the words were utterly beautiful. And it was a joy as well as a mountain to climb.
Yeah.
It was a mountain. In 4 weeks, it was challenging to get to stage, even though you came so well prepared, to know that the covers could go on the first night. But actually, almost all the covers could have gone on the first night, which is, I think that's a challenge people don't really recognize about ETO, because the tours are long and most people are in 2 or 3 shows. Yeah. Some people are also doing our operas for young people during the day. And those are some of the most demanding audiences, and none of the music in those is easy. So people have to be on top form. When they're rehearsing, you are often rehearsing 2 or 3 things at the same time. And there's me annoying you about the state of your cover role as well as the role that you're doing. And I am always annoying you. And when I interview assistant directors to work with me, I say, well, will you be annoying some of the time? Because I want to be nice some of the time. Can you hound people about their cover? And you didn't know that we were having meetings every Thursday of all the music staff to say who was most on top of their cover roles and who would be ready to go on the first night and who wouldn't. Who had to sit on the naughty step for a while. Yeah. This is all going on.
Yeah, but it's so important for you to know that, though, James, because I mean, you know, on a tour, particularly the you know, that spring tour, you know, January, February, March, flu, everything else, people getting sick, and I know that in time, you know, on other years, you have had a lot of kind of casualties, and you need to know that the covers are ready. It's terribly important.
Well, I mean, from the first night, I remember the Cavaradossi going on the first night, and the Cavaradossi, you know, he just sings. He can do his shtick and get away with it. But you know, in a piece like this,
no, quite.
Your Bunyan,
yeah.
If you were to pitch up, not on top,
yeah.
Oh yes, there would have to be surgery done. Sometimes.
Yeah.
But not with you 3, because I'm including Laura in this, because I see you. I always knew, when, and not just in this piece, I always knew when they come on, it'll go right. If we start skidding at some point, we'll get back in. And of course, not just because of you, but because Michael was conducting Priam and Phil was conducting Bunyan in that year. And then, of course, Michael was conducting the Puccini double bill, because Schicchi, it's very easy to get out, isn't it?
Oh, God.
Yes, and how.
But Michael would, you know, people don't know what a conductor does.
No.
But I'm telling you, when things go wrong, you know what they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pulling it back together. And, you know, if you've had the privilege of being in the rehearsal room and you know when it's going wrong, it's very exciting to see it skidding.
Well, there's another one of my favorite anecdotes is from Priam as well. There was a bit where in the beginning of the second act, it just shows how cool Michael is, because Michael, I think Roderick Earl came out at the very beginning, and it's all exposition. And he literally went, and he was desperately trying to find his note, and he just completely lost it. It's one of those, you can't see the wood from the trees. And we were on the side of the stage watching him. I was like, you know, when it's time is suspended forever, you know, and you're watching it and you'll say, he's not going to get right. And he's like he's slipping down ice, and he's desperately trying to get a hold of something, and he can't. And it goes on for literally, it's probably like 15 seconds. It's like nothing, but like when you're watching it, it seems like 17 years when you're watching it, and you desperately want him to get it. And I spoke to Grant afterwards, and he said, well, he's Australian. Well, you know, I was just trying to think, you know, I've got to wait for this cue for the trumpets. And so he was literally like waiting for Roddy to come in. And when it was his point, he heard the trumpets. And so for all this time, Roddy was going, and then Michael is behind. Michael is behind going, I loved you as her. behind, just trying to beat, because also, to make it even more difficult, I want the people out there to know that the orchestra was behind us as well, us, so not in front. So we can't even see Michael facing out as well. So not only have you, like you say, this fiendish music, but also, we can't see the orchestra, because normally when they're in front of you, you're slightly, singing-wise, you're slightly behind them, so you've got to slightly think ahead. When it's behind, it's like completely the opposite, which is totally anathema to what I normally do. Or that's, I don't know, my colleagues. But anyway, and so he's going, and Michael's behind, and Roddy's got nothing. And so Grant says, right, it's up to me to come in now. And so he waits for his cue. And so all this time he's going, and then Grant goes, agreed. So he says, just from nowhere. And I was absolutely crying with laughter. Just, it's one of those things. It happens. Like you say, when you watch it skid, it's like time just slows down. And but it's one of those things. It happens. Because I even say to people, it's not if you go wrong, it's how you cope with when it goes wrong. That's the important thing.
Well, it's a beast of a role, isn't it? Priam, I remember that was the one I remember in the second week of rehearsal, the person who was covering that, who was covering it because they told me they already knew it. Told me that they couldn't possibly learn it by the first night, and they were withdrawing from saying.
Oh, wow.
And I remember saying, oh, well, I guess I won't see you again then. Because you won't be doing the part in the other show either. And your name will fall out of my address book very quickly. And so there was a fair bit of panic and hand-holding, and all worked out. And, it was, I don't blame said person for having a crisis of confidence, but there needed to be some intense therapy exercise there. But there was another scene where poor Mike went wrong on a different night. And it's a lesson in child singers that this young fellow, Thomas Little, Henry Little's son, was playing young Paris in London. And then it was played by a marvelous mezzo-soprano on tour, who was also singing the role of, the choice role, who gets to sing the tune in
Carol Hughes. Carol Hughes, wasn't it?
Oh, Carol, yeah.
Yes, gorgeous Carol.
Lovely Carol.
Wonderful, vastly underrated performer. Such a beautiful color to the voice and such a talented actress. But it was the boy, it was Tom in London. And the great thing about kids is, once they get it in their heads, they do not go wrong. At least if they're musical. That's my experience of them anyway. They get it in their heads and it's sort of there for life. The poor kids are still singing it when they're 65. And this little lad was very businesslike. He was going right. And whether or not anybody else said whatever they were going to say or sang whatever note anybody else ended up on, he was coming in at pitch perfectly and in tempo and doing his bit, which he just did.
Fantastic.
Remarkable lad. You know, that fellow is he's up for university entrance in the autumn.
Oh,
wow. He was great. I remember how fantastic he was. Literally, I was like, oh my God, there was us stressing about it, and this boy can do it with it standing on his head. It's like puts us all to shame, I think.
And it wasn't a small part.
No.
So many kid performers. The most exceptional one, I think, was in New York. We were doing a show in BAM. It was a Handel opera, and this kid was playing the kid who comes in the last minute or something like that. And we always had a different kid in every town. And so we had an American kid, and he started off in the rehearsal. He had very little rehearsal. I remember saying, "Gosh, in all my years at the Met, I never got to climb a ladder." And meanwhile, the woman who sang the lead role, it was a big part, Melissa in Amadigi, and it was Magella Culla. I don't know if you know Magella.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, most extraordinary Irish soprano, very, very gifted bel canto singer. And this was her first Handel, and possibly her last Handel, I don't remember. But she was exceptional in it and feisty as hell. She, on the other hand, a mistress of humility in the face of this child who was, let's say, commonplace braggadocio, but he knew what he was about, and he's probably, I don't know, he's probably running the Met now for all I know. But Magella was determined to be able to say that she'd sung at the Met. So all of us were at Onegin first night, the Carson production there. And while the New York audience was booing it off the stage really loud because they hated it the first time round, while there was maximum noise in the house, Magella sang a note really loud so that she'd be able to say afterwards that she'd sung at the Met. And of course, she's somebody who could have sung at the Met and probably did thereafter, I don't know, but she was so modest and good-humored about things like most artists. She made fun of herself. I'm sorry, I'm getting off subject. But
well, I'm going to steer us in the direction of Puccini, and it occurs to me that we probably could have spent the whole conversation on King Priam because it's the most extraordinary of works of art. But I think Charne and Clarissa, you were in both of the double bills. Were you in the original and the revival?
Yeah. We were one of the ever presents. I think Andrew Glover as well. Andrew Glover was as well, I think. Yeah. He played Tinker, and I can't remember his role in the Schicchi. Sorry, but he was definitely there as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Gerardo, I think, and I was lucky enough to come in the revival and sing in the Schicchi. So I'm just going to quickly show you through photos of the Tabarro and the Schicchi. The Schicchi was directed by Liam Steele, and he sort of did it in a commedia dell'arte way, that we are all these stock characters, kind of grotesques, as you'll see if you didn't see the production. You'll see from these photos. But James, if you want to talk a little bit about the wonderful Tabarro first.
Oh yes, well, a great piece, so utterly different, completely.
Oh, Craig, yeah.
Verismo, I can't see anything. Am I on a non-screen sharing view?
There's a picture of Craig lighting his pipe, that vital, crucial bit.
Yeah, the lighting of the pipe. But I mean, that piece is so brilliant, and we had wonderful casts both times. It's just the best music, and it's perfectly formed. I felt so privileged to get to do it, and I desperately wanted to do Schicchi because it is the perfect opera. But I knew Liam would do a better job. He's just such a remarkable guy, so generous. I have to say, of all the directors I've worked with, I just feel like we're kind of like brothers. There's never been a moment of rivalry, only support and happiness and good humor and a lot of fun between us. And he's a polymath. He's a guy who's thinking about loads of different things when he's making a production, and he really knows what he wants. I mean, he can drive you mad when you're getting ready because he's changed his mind so much. You could waste a load of money. If you followed any of his suggestions, you'd waste a fortune. But if you just frustrate him and don't give him what he wants until he absolutely needs it, and remember that it's possible to say no, then you end up with something great.
It's a real insight into production.
Huh?
Real insight into production here. I love it. Interesting.
So this is the first of our images from Schicchi, where you can see our grotesques. And what we were talking about earlier about getting out of sync. Schicchi was one of those shows, particularly with Liam's direction, that if you got out of sync with the music, that was bad enough. If you got out of sync with our choreography, which we were all doing the same thing, and if one person did something different, you would kind of ruin the whole scene. And I remember, Clarissa, it was awful when you just felt, well, one would feel so bad, wouldn't they, when you did something that was out of sync?
Oh, absolutely. And also what was really hard was that, Liam was such kind of taskmaster. He'd come in, you'd do a rehearsal, and it would be absolutely set. And then he'd watch it, and then he'd think, actually, there's kind of 2 seconds here where nothing is happening. I'm going to put another movement in. And, and I mean, it was just extraordinary because
because it was a revival as well.
Yeah.
He sort of thought, well, there's definitely 2 beats there that I haven't used the first time round.
That's right.
So I'm going to use it now.
Yeah.
And the poor Ranuccio trying to sing that aria, and holy cow, I thought if he has to do another thing with a prop,
Yeah.
well, he's trying to sing that. I mean, he's only got a minute, and it's hard. You had to cover that, didn't you, Charne?
Yeah, I did. Well, I had to learn it. So I learned it when I did it. I just thought, I was like, I literally could not believe the things that this poor tenor had to go through. I was like, when I sing, I just stand still and more or less, and I emote and maybe put a hand out, maybe. but like this guy, he was jumping around places, jumping on sofas, throwing things in the air, making towers on whatever, putting out, easels and stuff. I was like, oh my God, it's unbelievable. But by the time I practiced it enough, I could do it. So it's that initial shock of going, oh my God, I can't do this. This is crazy. And you've got to sing it a fiendishly hard aria because it ends on a B flat, it's it is really, really hard because it's quite high. Because also Luciano, the guy that's singing, he's a different tenor to me. So he's much higher in terms of, in terms of voice type tenor. But still, I could do it by the end. But it's that lovely challenge of like going out of your comfort zone, and yeah, it was fiendish. But I remember, Bradley, like you had that bit, I think you showed the pictures just there, where you're going through trying to find the will, and you're throwing everything, like literally making an absolute pigsty out of the set, like throwing things everywhere, literally, like throwing papers, and you had to stop at just that moment because we had to obviously rehearse that, and I never went on, but. And also like reading the will and all this kind of thing. And
the reading the will was the moment, really. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I remember, speaking of cover rehearsals, there was an amazing one, which you were there, Charne, and I don't think Luciano was there, but they'd have been scheduled, the covers and the principals would be there.
Oh, yes,
and it was this rehearsal, because we thought, well, it's so difficult, it'd be better if the principals will just kind of teach it to the covers. But it became the most hilarious rehearsal. I think it was Saturday morning, so it's already detention slot. That I remember, because I had to come downstage at that moment when we were just sort of staying on, mules and senior and blah, blah, blah. And then I get Clarissa and Gaynor Keeble charging at me with their sticks, and it was just terrifying and hilarious all in one. And it was like, who thought this was a good idea to have everybody in the same room? But it was a lot of fun.
I remember that Liam didn't think it was a good idea. I had to insist. It's one of the complete weirdnesses of ETO because it doesn't happen elsewhere. It's not nice for the cover to be watched by the person who's doing the role. It's not, and it's regarded as undignified for the person doing the role to have to be at cover rehearsals. But who is better equipped to help another professional than the person who has spent the time at it? And if you haven't got goodwill towards your colleagues, you don't have a place in ETO. Yeah. And it sticks out quickly. Absolutely. That goodwill is what sees you through a tour. Yeah. And the covers will go on. It's in everybody's interest for them to know it because they'll screw it up for you unless they do know the thing. Yeah. I know people find it really weird. I spend my life thinking about the bloomin' covers. First cast, that's easy. That's a doddle. You want to get, and I'm not interested in cover rehearsals with just covers. No. It has to be people who know the parts mixed up. And the covers have to get up during regular rehearsals. Yeah.
Well, we saw there, even in those photos, that it was Craig Smith was singing Schicchi in the dress rehearsal, but he wasn't doing the role. It was Andrew Slater. So and he was brilliant.
Yeah.
It was great. Great.
Andrew Craig is a great artist. Yes. For me, one of the many, but a terrifically uncelebrated baritone in the UK. We don't have them.
He's astounding. When he gets, we did a Traviata after Boccanegra, and there's that duet, I can't remember the name of it. He'd sing a top B flat at the end. I'll be like, and it's written as an F, and I was like looking at him, right, I'm going to sing a B flat now. How dare you? It's like. But he's a great artist and a lovely, lovely, lovely man. Absolutely, I love him to bits. Absolute bits. He can seem curmudgeonly, but actually, he's one of the most sweet, devoted, artistic people I've probably ever worked with. He's so lovely and a fantastic singer. Fantastic singer. An artist.
very good international training. He's just a remarkable person. But I often think that in England, I don't think people know enough what goes into singing. They don't know I think there's a lot of people who don't know what a Verdi baritone is. So you get chaps chucked up on stage who've got a decent baritone voice and for a few years, but then they're kind of wrecked or spread or something like that. And then someone like Craig was singing, I would say, as beautifully when he finished singing, because I believe he's retired now. I spoke to him the other day. As beautifully, as eloquently, and as musically as he did the first day, and I don't think he ever pushed his voice in any. Anyway, that's a sort of a thing. We did have great fun with that double bill, and I was thinking about it today, thinking that this conversation was going to be witnessed, so it shouldn't just be a love-in. But there's something, I just feel so grateful, because in those days, 13, 14, 15, I just felt, when I went to work, I felt mighty. I thought there were a lot of things we could do because we had an audience who would follow us to an extent. Priam didn't sell out anywhere. Let's not kid ourselves. Should have. And we should have sold it better. We should always sell everything better. Always. But mind you, we should do everything better. But I felt mighty. I thought we're making a really good fist of fabulous operas. I'm not picking them because they're unknown. I'm picking them because we've got an audience with the goodwill and intelligence and taste to follow us, who actually want their lives to be richer, who aren't just going to the opera in order to recognize something already familiar and compare it to their favorite Tweety bird on a recording in a studio with a microphone stuck up their uvula. People who want to take a chance that something might happen. Because, it's very rare that something happens in the theater. There's an awful lot of rehearsals going on stage and you're buying tickets for them. But we felt like we could make something happen, and we didn't always succeed. But in Bunyan, which is a weak piece, but there was a fantastic goodwill in the company to make something poetic out of that piece and to realize what poetry there was there. In Priam, which is just plain bold in every way, and constantly risking absurdity and death, as I think it's Wallace Stevens would say. And in the Schicchi and Tabarro, which are opposite ends of the spectrum emotionally, and are also perfect. So any imperfection is easily observable. We just had companies of people who were taking risks and recognizing that they had to be at a very high standard to be on stage with everybody else. Mm-hmm. But that was no problem to them. It was just people got to be their best, I think. I mean, in your seat, Clarissa, you must have felt, I'm at my best here. In the same way as Frugula, which people take for nothing, and it's played as a caricature by all these loud-voiced, busted-out mezzos around the world, clapped-out people who can't sing beautifully anymore, but were famous once. I mean, you made that person heartbreaking.
Well, I loved her. I loved both of them. Frugula was so... she's vulnerable, very vulnerable person, and I kind of felt, I suppose for both of those roles, I mean with any role that a singer takes on, but particularly these two roles, because they're so different, both kind of almost mad people, but I kind of was
almost I think they're officially mad.
Yeah. But you know, you kind of have to find that part of their vulnerability, and both of them are very vulnerable. Frugal has got such heart, but you know, goes through kind of quite a lot of, well, a lot of torment. But Zita is vulnerable in her kind of graftingness, and but desperate for you know, for her nephew, and you know, she's I don't know. I suppose what one searches inside of yourself as to who, you know, what part of you is that person.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved doing that for both of them. And you know, Zita, particularly when I came back to her, because of course when I first sang her, I was a little bit younger than I was the last time. So it was wonderful meeting them both again. But Zita particularly, I kind of, I was thinking about my mother a lot, who had subsequently died. And I sort of thought, gosh, I can see quite a lot of her there. And
was that who James was talking about? Because your brother came to a show afterwards and he says, oh, I can see Clarissa's drawing on the family.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I could. It was, you know, that rather irrational and irascible, the irascible nature of her, you know, getting so cross with everybody all the time. And yeah, I kind of feel that in myself sometimes now.
I think the pairing is amazing. I never said it to you at the time because you were finding your own way and with different directors. But I remember, I think that Zita is a person who has no value. She searches for value in commodity because she protests that her value comes from her family connections and being an old family. Well, everybody knows that's worth nothing.
Yeah.
And she is essentially worth nothing. And she grasps to get every nickel she can, every dirty corner of a field in order to have value. Whereas Frugala is essentially value itself.
Oh, yes, no, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
She has nothing but is value.
Yes. Frugala has a huge heart, that's for sure. Yeah.
It was always really nice because before, just as the aria ends, I make my cue down onto the boat, so I got to listen to the aria every night. So it was so lovely. I was sat in the darkness just listening to her. I really enjoyed it every night. It was just like every time it was different. I loved it. It was great.
Really, you were coming on stage to be such a creep.
Oh, you mean in my character? You mean, James? Of course, yes.
A completely lovable.
Because it's really interesting you talk about arts, because I suppose you can construe that as being sort of pretentious and poncy, but I really felt like, because I always try, I know I'm a bit of a silly guy and I muck about a lot, but you know, I always see the sort of the lighter side of life. But at the same time is that when I do a performance, I never try and make it ever the same, ever. Like even if I'm on a train track, I always feel like I'm doing something different. And so because they call them revivals, but really they're not. I think the set is the same, and maybe some of the faces are familiar, but like, for example, like first time around we did it with in 2011 with Simon Thorpe and Julie Unwin, and obviously they brought something different. And then when it came around to doing it 2018, we also, you know, it was just like completely different. It was like the room had changed or the people had changed, but the room was the same. So we were just sort of like, you're reacting to this new person's thoughts, and if they do whatever they do acting wise, whatever they do, no matter how they do it, it's valid. And so you've got to see how you can make it work. And it's a lovely reactive response, a lovely, you know, almost unspoken thing, although obviously we're singing text, but in terms of movement and reactions and the camaraderie underneath all those artistic layers as well, that we're trying to fight for each other as one does with ETO.
The power dynamic was so different for you to fit into, because Craig concealed all his power in the same way as he conceals his formidable vocal technique. And Sarah Jane was ebullient. And one sensed in the other pairing that Simon, of course, he's quite his virility and his energy are almost oppressive on stage. And Julie was, you know, just was playing a character who it fitted perfectly. She was suffering under it, She was repressed by it. So you were destroying a couple that had an entirely different dynamic, even though you were doing it with your feet in the same place and your mat being lit at the same time and the same cross-light cue coming up at the same point.
Yeah, exactly. It would be familiar yet different, you know. And like, because I think, you know, the Simon, you can see he was more, like you say, like a sort of very overbearing, you know, paranoid person, whereas because I think Craig had this sort of fragility and you felt more sorry for him.
Yeah.
But still you knew that because me and myself and Georgetta were, you know, we wanted a way out, even if probably it would mean just, you know, going to a shed and that would be it. And it would finish the next day, for example. It's just the fact that it's what I can't have. And, you know, it's obviously, you know, having this affair. But it was different. But you know, obviously as well doing it, you know, because I counted up, I did a bit of research. I think we did 40 shows altogether, 40 shows. So you know, although it's a one-act opera, it's like a condensed, hyper dense, you know, version of an opera, because you have to go through all the emotions. You can't just do anything half-hearted. Oh, it's only a third of an opera, so I'll just take it easy. You know, you've got to tell the story really quickly. And obviously Puccini does a lot of the work for you anyway, in terms of his writing and the words and whatever, and the narrative. But you've got to work really quickly to get that across, like, you know, instantly, like, right, I know the people in the audience get it, you know, and that was hard as well. So it's really intense. And obviously with the Schicchi as well.
The Tabarro can really seem like a Vorspiel, can't it? It can seem like almost like a curtain raiser. And I thought that was the challenge, that this was really a red meat opera. It was no curtain raiser. If anything, the Schicchi is a bit of tiramisu, I think.
Yeah.
A meringue or something.
But the most perfect tiramisu you've ever had.
Yeah.
It is the most, but I always
Shameless.
thought, I just love it. I just think
So
Schicchi
shameless. You are shameless.
No, but the Schicchi as a piece is just so incredible.
It is. I agree.
And it's almost always, no matter what the production's like, a perfectly adequate evening. I struggle to find it more. And I do think that what Liam achieved was special because it was entirely consistent.
Yeah.
And although it was highly directed, it was difficult to see the director's footprints.
Mm-hmm.
You just had a sense that people agreed on a style, and within a style, they found liberation. And I remember him telling me the second time, he was a great one for saying, "What the hell did you cast that one for?" Or what am I going to do with that one? Or what? Well, they're all fine except for those 4. And they think 4, and then it'd be 1 or 2 or something like that. And then you'd say to him on the first night, "Well, you managed very well with X," and then he'd say, "Oh no, they were brilliant. Once they got it, they were brilliant. Once they got it." And you do think that with him, you have to kind of get your passport stamped.
Yeah.
And then you're fine. You know, then you've got a bit of a ticket to ride, which is really good. I think it's a sign of good direction that people feel that they have some freedom. He's a very special guy. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, he's fantastic.
He felt mighty too, I think, when he did those operas. I'm not sure that he always does when he does opera, but we were lucky, you know, I'm not saying things aren't good now, they are good, and we'll go into that in a moment, but, you know, we had our own place.
Yes.
It was miserable, it was cold, it was a factory with big freezing rooms in Bermondsey, but it was our place. We had a green room. And then we moved to another place that was our place. We could make a stamp. You know, we were working with loads of other artists. The place was packed with studios of other artists. And Christ, they'd walk right into the place and nick your bicycle. It wasn't all jam. But there was something that made you feel powerful, which is really quite important, and not obsessed with caution. When you've got, you know, theater partners, like 25 theater partners, who many of whom are obsessed with caution, almost none of whom attend performances. because they've got kids and lives, and they don't want to be out in the evening, and they've been struggling with an accountant in the morning. So almost none of them come to the shows or know what you do. So it's all a convincing act, and let's face it, it's a confidence act. I am a con artist. That's how I have got along in this, because confidence is the name of the game, and it's just, things are meringue light in their delicacy and in the ability to happen, because there's 80 people on the road. There's a terrible lot of sniffles to get, and moods and lives and breakups and all manner of things. And maybe your audience believes in you and you believe in them, and you can practically make love to them at the interval, but it's not necessarily the case that the theatre managements believe in you, or the main stakeholders, or even necessarily your colleagues in the opera world. So, it takes the benefit of working with brilliant people like you guys to make you feel you could be mighty. And every year, I have to say, I think it's tougher to feel mighty.
Yeah.
And now it's really tough.
Yes, agreed.
Definitely.
For you guys, it's much worse than for us. It's tough to feel confident for us, but I can't imagine what it's like for your confidence. And my heart goes out to you. It's brutal now, and
we
coming back is not easy.
You've just got to believe that it's going to all come back.
Yeah. Well, we need the people. I'm always lecturing our supporters.
Yeah.
We need our supporters to work harder for us. They already work hard. They're already brilliant. I'm in love with them all. And actually, I like them all. And I love talking to people in the foyer. And I love people who take a punt on Ottone, so that you have more than 1,000 people in the Hackney Empire for Ottone. I love that about the ETO audience.
Yeah.
But they have to find the audience for us.
Yeah.
The new audience, the more diverse audience. There's nothing wrong with our audience, but they have to help us find them, because nobody in the theatres is going to help us find them. Mostly they're not interested in opera. Mostly they're thinking, I've got a stand-up comedy act on Thursday and Friday. That's going to pull the punch, and so we can look at this as a lost leader. Opera doesn't do a good job for itself.
No.
Opera in the UK promotes itself as a garden entertainment for the exclusive and wealthy, which is a fine thing, an estimable thing, but not the whole picture.
No.
So I relish these discussions, and I know I talk too much, but because I think, our audience gets to see and meet our artists and know that their support's really important, and can change things, and can make you and measly me feel mighty and do exceptional things.
Exactly. I think it's what we love our audiences for, and what we need them to do more, isn't it? But I think I'm going to have to jump in there and wrap up, because we've talked and time has flown. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming on this warm evening. Thank you so much, Charne, for being here. Thank you,
pleasure.
Clarissa.
My pleasure.
It's so lovely to see you both. And thank you, James.
Laura, don't forget Laura.
Thank you for coming to watch.
Hi, Laurie.
Hi, Laura.
Great to
and
see
next week we've got a lovely conversation with 2 more ETO artists. We've got a conversation with Andrew Slater and with Rachel Nichols, who I wonder whether they'll be on the same screen. I don't know.
Because they are
Might have
married.
given the secret away. No, I haven't. No. And we're going to talk about opera in the UK and abroad, and also about auditioning with them, because they've both done a fair bit of being in front and behind the table, as it were. But that's it from us, from In Conversation and from English Touring Opera. It's really good to see you all. Have a good